Hello, welcome to the Global Lives. Today marks the first day of our Global Citizen Solutions and Goldcrest Real Estate School Week. Over the next 5 days, we will be exploring the landscape of the international schooling system in Portugal. Each live event will feature an educational consultant, a parent, as well as our experts in real estate, visa, and relocation services. In today's live session, we have two very special guests who will share their insights on education in Portugal. First up is John McNertney, an investment and financial advisor at Green Ocean. And John has gone through the challenging task of finding schools for his children and will join us today to share some valuable insights from the parents' perspective. We also have Martin Harris, a principal at the Lisbon, who is back with us. He was here in the live that we did last year, but is back now to discuss education and the role of school in helping families integrate into a new community. And finally, we have Amy Conoley from Goldcrest to provide a perspective on real estate trends, and Aline Machado, our onboarding executive, who will give us an overview of what families are looking for when they come to Global Citizen Solutions. Now, just a few housekeeping notes. This live session should take around 40 minutes. I will ask our guests a few questions, and then we will open the floor to a Q&A session. Remember, all our live sessions are recorded and available on our social media and YouTube channel. So if you need to leave early, feel free to jot down your question here, and a member of our team will respond promptly. So now, on to our live. Over the past 5 years, the number of international schools in the country has doubled, and there is now a plethora of international certificates available to parents in Portugal. And this was the motivation behind Global Citizen Solutions creating an international guide of schools in Portugal, which is available both online and in print. So I'm going to show you the print version quickly. There you go, it's like a magazine. And you will have a directory of the schools, but also maps of each area, which is very useful if you are looking for accommodation in Portugal. So you will know that there is a total of 51 schools in this guide, 13 in Greater Lisbon, 12 in Algarve, 6 in the north, 1 in centre, and 2 in Madeira Island. This will be shared with you. Our team is now sharing the link for our online version. And without much further ado, let's start asking Aline Machado from Global Citizen Solutions some questions. So, Aline, in your experience with Global Citizen Solutions, what are some of the common challenges or concerns that individuals and families have when they are relocating to Portugal?
Well, there are a few, and I believe for most of us here in this life, actually everyone here, we had a few of these concerns, right, Chilani? Because I don't believe anyone here was born in Portugal or like was here not a long time ago. Mm-hmm. And so mainly for countries that are not Portuguese the first language, probably the language barrier is one of the first ones that come into mind, because Well, although here in Portugal it's easy to communicate in English, is still a barrier if you go to some places and some people don't know how to speak in English, but it's not something that people have to worry about because it's easy to communicate anyway. And of course, learning a few keywords are always good, just at least to sound more friendly. And actually, here in Portugal, people are really friendly. So one of the concerns actually that people have is about actually social integration. And
Right.
every single client that comes to us, they always say, so, oh, here in Portugal, everyone treats us so well. Everyone is friendly. They are very helpful. They come to us and try to help. So it actually, learning Portuguese is almost a barrier here, because when someone sees that someone from outside is trying to speak Portuguese and maybe have some difficulties, people here switch to English. So
Yes.
sometimes it's hard. People that are learning to speak Portuguese. That's
Yeah.
it's actually one of the
You can see
concerns.
the native speakers of English in our live all nodding, Martin, John, and Amy.
Yes, they know that's how that works. So for me and you, Gisani, we speak Portuguese, so no one tried to speak English with us. Actually, normally it happens, but our Portuguese normally is good enough at first, so no one think that they need help us. But other concern is how they will be here in Portugal, in the sense of being legal here. So the visa, the residence permit, how they will come here and have the right to stay in Portugal. Of course, depending on the individual, it can vary. The visa that will use, so you can have like the golden visa, you can have the D7, that is kind of passive income visa, you can have entrepreneur visa or digital nomad visa. So there are a few visas. Normally they say that is D something visa, so I believe is probably D1 or D0 to D, I don't know, 11 or even more visas. But of course, we also help clients with all these visas, so we have more information about that.
Okay.
The cost of living also can be something that is a concern, although Portugal is a very affordable country, mainly if you're not talking about Lisbon, Porto, and maybe the Algarve. Health care system as well is something that our clients worry when they're coming to Portugal, because actually the health system here is really good. It is very affordable. Even if clients want to do some private health insurance, it's quicker and not expensive at all. So it's just a good thing to have. It's not a must, but it's always good.
Yeah.
And of course, tax and financial considerations. And John here probably is a good one to talk about this if they have any concerns about that. Where to live, and of course, where their kids, their child will study as well is one of their concerns, and how that will work, and if it will be easy, the transition, mainly if they're coming from another country, mainly depending on the age as well. So that's are a few of concerns, but we are here also to help them always with every concern.
Yeah. And I think one of the most relevant topics there for our life today is the issue of the social integration, as you said, because it has a lot to do with language. And also, we know as parents how schools are important in integrating, even if you are in your own country, but you meet other parents, so it's a whole new social life that is built around the kids, and that's very important. So now, Aline, I believe with all this demand that you got from the clients at Global Citizen Solutions, that kind of prompted you guys to start the International School Guide, correct? To provide the clients with a directory with information about the school landscape in Portugal, correct?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, sure. Because if not the most, one of the most important things when a family is coming and moving to another country will be which school their kids will study.
Mhm.
So how that would be. And here at Global Citizen Solutions, we are always trying to help the client for every single thing that we can. So every single demand. That's why we are actually growing as well. So every time a client asks something, and if you're not doing it, we are find a way to help the client to do it. If not inside GCS, we're gonna have partners to help them. And of course, looking for a school maybe in another country and not knowing how the systems work, it's not can be, it's really complicated. And sometimes you don't know where to start from. So
Mhm.
this guide is good because we put a lot of information together, mainly the most important ones, and even listed schools and maybe some insights for parents to see what they should consider when looking for a school. Because of course you will think, okay, I want the best school for my son, for my daughter, but what should I be looking for when I'm trying to find the best one? And of course, each family is different, and each family will have their own opinion. And what is the best one for one family, maybe is not the best one for the other one. But this guide, I think we put together the main key points when considering the schools to bring to put your kids, and also explain a little bit how the Portuguese systems work. So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
mainly that the clients demand, and to help out clients and everyone that we will access actually this guide.
Yeah. Excellent. I think that's a good enough reason to start as a director of international schools. And now, because we were talking about the concerns of the parents when they're looking for school, I am going to jump to John, because John relocated with his family here. He is a parent who did a thorough research on the schooling system in Portugal. And he also has some insights about the Portuguese curricula, which I'd like to hear. But I also want to address Martin and Amy. No, do not feel neglected. I'm going to speak to you too in a bit. But first, John, can you tell us a bit about yourself and what you do and why you're in Portugal?
Yeah, sure, Gisane. I'm a 45-year-old mid-career professional who did not plan on moving to Portugal. So I had to do a lot of digging when I realized that all three of my children were going to be moving here. I have three children who are now ranging in ages from 8 to 13.
Wow.
So I've been here for 4 years. And so at the time that I was entering into the Portuguese situation, into the school system, they were 4 to 9 years of age. And
Mm-hmm.
I've been taking them now through, I guess my oldest will be in high school in just a couple of years. And so we're from San Francisco, California. And I was in mostly the private school system in San Francisco and in a bilingual private school when I was in San Francisco. So when we moved to Lisbon, we were kind
Mm-hmm.
of prepared to face the language challenge,
Yeah.
such as it is. And so it was, it was a lot, but it wasn't something that we weren't prepared to manage.
Which
Um,
languages were your kids studying apart from English there?
well, it wasn't Portugal or Portuguese. I'm sorry. But in San Francisco, we actually sent our children to a French school
Okay.
because my wife has a French background.
All right. Okay.
So that ended up actually skewing our selection process towards schools that were bilingually French here. So
Okay.
we were looking at Lycée Français. We were looking at Redbridge in Campo do Ric.
Yeah.
So that's where we ended up, honestly. So
Okay.
we went to Redbridge, and then due to there was a period of time where we thought we were going to be leaving Lisbon, and so we partially withdrew from the school, and we lost our spots. And that actually ended up placing us over into some of the international schools, which was where our real education began. Because when we landed in Redbridge, it seemed like kind of a no-brainer, right? The kids speak French, so let's
Yeah.
go to the French school. So then when we had to find another international school, that was where we started interviewing and researching the many different options, the blossoming range of options among
Mm-hmm.
international schools. And we ended up in United Lisbon out in Parques das Nações. So we had our kids spread out in different schools. We've subsequently withdrawn them from that school and put one of our children into a native Portuguese school. And that was actually the trick for us, because as Aline said, being like culturally, I mean, that's the dream, is to assimilate culturally at some point in time.
Mhm.
And it is much easier if you can be at a school for which Portuguese is a primary focus.
Yeah.
And you didn't ask this yet, but I have to say it's hard when you're at the international schools, because I have the sense that a lot of us that choose international schools really want it to be English first, or even if we say we want to have a Portuguese experience, the school doesn't treat us that way, because it tends to cater to someone who wants to have an English first experience.
Yes.
So the Portuguese classes are sort of like you're taking a Portuguese class in America. And they just take you by the hand, and they take you so slowly through the curriculum. But my boy, who is at a Portuguese public school, kid is like a native speaker already, because he's basically forced to jump into the deep end. And so,
and is he now in an international school? English? No, he's still there.
No, yeah, because we withdrew him from the international school. And if this is a disorganized approach to explaining my situation, I apologize, but it was just so fascinating for us, because the international school, in a way, it catered over much to us. I mean, I think that they had the right intention and with how they structured the experience, but I don't like my children to be catered to. And so I really prefer now that my children are going through school in what I view as the normal way, which is that they have schoolyard issues that are being resolved among the children, and like in Portuguese, right? There's not like a English speaking teacher that's coming in and saying, "Hey, Johnny, are you okay? Is everyone fine?" So I find it preferable that my children are just, because if you want to assimilate, then just, do so. And so that's been our experience. Some of our kids are still at the French school, and it's an amazing school. But again, their Portuguese is just not coming along.
No, I see. I'm going to stop you there just for a moment, because I'd like to hear Martin. I know the Lisbon hasn't opened yet, but soon to open. I just wanted to know, do you feel that, because you had many years of experience with international schools, do you feel that teaching the language of the country where you're based is very important?
Absolutely. As you say, and I think just about everybody who has been to see me agrees that if you're going to move to a country, then you've got to not only learn the language, but also the culture. So I agree with what John was saying about learning the language. I think you've got to have different streams, but it's not just about learning the language. It's also learning something about the geography and the history. I mean, Portugal has the most unbelievable. I'm a bit of a history bore, so I could do 12 podcasts on history and the history I've learned of Portugal, because it's amazing. I think this place has got so much rich culture that the children should know about. So every parent who has been to see me loves that aspect of it. And of course, you wrap that up in food and the language as well. So I agree with John. I think some children take on board new languages quicker than others, and I've been amazed at some of the children who are sort of only 8 years old, but they're already speaking 3 languages. So that's to me important to remember, that it's not just people like me who are slow to pick up a language. And by the way, anyone who does find Portuguese difficult, I would say the same as I say to all children: just keep going, don't give up, because it is too easy. The Portuguese are so lovely, they want to speak English, but we got to keep going. So I've had bizarre conversations with people in shops where I'm speaking in really bad Portuguese and they're speaking in English to me, and just seems so weird. But anyway, keep going.
Good.
So to answer your question, yes, absolutely. Yes. People don't come here just to live in a little English bubble or American bubble or whatever bubble. They want to come and assimilate the culture and the language.
Yes, of course. And then now back to John. Thank you, Martin. But back to John. Do you now, as an American, what did you find of the Portuguese curricula? I think previously you shared some thoughts about it. You were pleasantly surprised how thorough it was. You want to talk about it?
Yeah. So, and isn't it funny, Martin, when people apologize to you for like their command of English? You're like, guys, I'm in your country.
Listen, I'm English, John, so I spend my whole time apologizing for everything. So
that's a good point. But yeah, Gisèle, the curriculum is so strong here. I was just blown away by how truly like focused on academia the school system is here. Okay, because I'm American, and this is not intended to denigrate any of my colleagues in America, but we are really focused on, you know, sports. We're really focused on you know, getting the right job, which means getting the right test scores. We have a system in the United States where there's a lot of teaching to the test that happens. And you can't get away from that because standardized testing is such a large part of the protocol, you know, for getting into higher education. But the schools here have been very focused and in an authentic way on the academic, you know, work at hand, and math and science especially. I think that my children have actually been coming along in math a bit farther than their peer group that I have stayed in connection with in the United States. And the work is rather rigorous and very seriously undertaken. So that's a big perk for me.
That's a very good point, and it's important for our viewers as well because they're all researching schools for their kids. I wanted to ask as well, what you had in mind while researching for schools for your kids. You already mentioned that the French initially was a bilingual environment, and then French because of the schools they were attending back in the USA. But was there any other criteria that you had in mind while you were researching?
Well, I wanted the children to have access to, you know, the range of after-school experiences that schools might foster. And so I was pleasantly surprised to find that all of the schools, actually, except for the Portuguese school, so that I guess we can't check that category for my my Portuguese school, but that's because it's not the private school experience. The private schools have had a great range of arts and additional STEM-oriented work that have been offered for the children after school, and not just as a mini daycare, right? Because that's what we had a little bit of in the United States was these kind of sort of touchy-feely after-school clubs. But my children are involved in, gosh, one of them is taking free-form surfing lessons, for example. That's exciting. There's not American football. Sorry. So if any of your listeners at home are excited about their children going on to play, you know, American football, of course, we don't have it. But there's super competitive soccer, or as you would rightly call it, football. Football.
Right. Yeah. Okay. I'd like also to know very briefly now before I speak to Martin. Were you looking for the school first and then the accommodation, or did you look for both at the same time?
Accommodation meeting,
as in a property to live.
School first, actually. It's a good question. Yeah, because we ultimately chose to settle in Campo do Rico because we're walking to school now. Yeah. Okay. In the urban experience that we had, it was kind of like a daily hell of taking your children and putting them on the public bus system or really driving. Ultimately, I ended up driving 1 hour each way to get into school. So we ended up settling next to the school, and the children could all walk to school in 15 minutes, which is killer.
Oh, yeah, that's great. That's an amazing thing.
Such a quality of life issue.
Yeah.
And for them as well, they must feel so independent because it gives them some agency. They're able to walk to school by themselves.
Well, you know, San Francisco versus Lisbon in terms of like the practical consideration of security, Lisbon is just no comparison, of course, because it feels so safe and people are so kind. And that's not a factor for large American cities.
No, definitely not. Okay, thank you, John. So now I'm going to ask some questions. I want to get the school perspective from Martin. So Martin's not new on our live. So he was talking to us last year about our international school guide. But I think it's always good to remind our audience. So Martin, if you could share a bit of a background, talk a bit about yourself, that would be great.
Of course, I can talk about myself forever. Gisèle, thank you. Can I just echo what John said, by the way, Gisèle? I would say 80% of our parents who are coming to Lisbon, either from elsewhere in Portugal or from overseas, want to be able to walk their children to school. So I completely echo what John was saying. And that fits in with our sort of sustainability approach to education as well. So I've been ahead in the UK. I grew up in Hong Kong, so I love it's international, outward looking, love traveling, and I've been ahead back in the UK of 2 different schools for 20 years, and then this amazing project landed in my lap, and it didn't take me long to say yes, please, when I was luckily offered the post. Partly because it's a chance to do something completely fresh, to build a school from scratch is, I would think, every head's dream, and particularly post-COVID, when we can see clearly what children need in the sort of 2020s, 2030s. So that was a really strong pull. And of course, as John has already said, to be in a lovely city like Lisbon was a double attraction for me. So the Lisbon, it has been this sort of pet project of mine for the last year, and we're opening next year. And yeah, it's a very exciting time. It's a crossroads in education. There's a lot of people asking questions, and here's a chance with no sort of baggage to build something brand new.
Excellent. And where are you guys based? Tell us a bit about the Lisbon.
The Lisbon is in an old pasta factory in Alcântara, which was an industrial corner of the city near the docks, and has, over the last 5 to 10 years, begun to slowly sort of gentrify, if that's the right word. There's a teaching hospital, large teaching hospital in this corner of the world, lots of new accommodation going in, and we're taking over a very large set of buildings that sadly were sitting empty and a bit of an eyesore. So we're breathing new life into an old historical building. And it's a beautiful corner of the city. And I hope, Gisèle and I might be able to talk a little bit about some of the exciting partnerships that we've built, because we have no sort of large outside area to play sport, but it's forced us to look outwards and use Lisbon, which has so many amazing opportunities for partnerships, which I can come to later.
Oh yeah, great. No, please. I was going to ask you more about the educational approach of the Lisbon. So please tell us more about it and about these partnerships as well.
Well, I think the educational approach, fun enough, I sort of phoned about 12 different heads around the world and said, I've got a blank piece of paper. Where on earth do I start? And 10 of them said, just choose your curriculum. And the 11th and 12th said, what sort of school do you want it to be? How do you want it to feel? And I suddenly realized that actually, of course, everyone immediately thinks of what curriculum are you teaching? But actually, to me, what sort of girl or boy do I want to exit the school aged 18 to 17, 18, to leave the school? And that became much more important than, how many exams they have tucked under their arms. Of course, that's important too. But the skills that we're arming the children with and the personalities that we want to imbibe in them, that to me was a far more important aspect. And so, I think everybody would sort of agree you want a kind school, but lots of people say that, but actually embedding that in everything that you do is important and probably easier for a school that's brand new. And so, yes, it was choosing the ethos and values first, and then choosing the curriculum. And one of the exciting things is of course, you've got to fit in with curriculum that people will recognise, particularly those coming from outside Lisbon. But also there's a chance to sort of tinker with that and perhaps add in and change it for the best for the future. So, for example, during my time as head of a school in the UK, I became increasingly frustrated with the tight boundaries that subjects had. And it became clear to me that they're outdated, and that actually what we should be doing is looking ahead to arm these children with something better for the future. So I hope that we can offer different subjects that actually, they're not revolutionary, they're just an evolving nature. So particularly something like science and maths, you can make so much more practical and relevant to the modern world. So I hope we've been looking forward and helping prepare a really exciting curriculum for children. There's an element of choice in there, particularly for children aged 10 to 14. We want, I like, for example, aspects of the American elective system for children there. So there's a wonderful example to build that into a British curriculum.
Yeah, that's interesting. So in terms of curriculum, what we have here is you offering is the British curriculum as well as the International Baccalaureate. Is that correct?
Correct. Yes. So it's
Can you explain the difference between both?
They're very well. They overlap quite a lot, to a large extent. So we start off with the British curriculum at the bottom of the school. In the middle of the school, we have a sort of concoction of the British and, as I said, a sort of hybrid. And then we finish with the International Baccalaureate, which to me is a fantastic outward-looking, thorough preparation for children as they head off to further education, but also, more importantly, to life beyond that. And I can say that as a dad of children who've gone through the IB as well as ahead.
I see. Wow, that's good. Have both perspectives from you. Martin, finally, when is the Lisbon opening?
So we are opening in September 2024, Josane, and admissions are open. So we've already had quite a few registrations and lots of interest, which is lovely. I can see from the office that I'm sitting at now, the crane is swinging around in the sunlight. So actually, I know that they're working hard.
And it's good to know. That's exciting. I'm really looking forward to visit the school. I love the area. It's so vibrant, the LX factory. So much going on in that region of Alcantara. And amazing view as well.
It is. And Josane, actually, this is a part of the city that I didn't realize was so rich in culture. So we formed a partnership with the Metropolitana Lisbon Orchestra, which is 500 meters from the school. And there you've got some of the world's best musicians. So they're going to be teaching our children, which is the most amazing opportunity. And then we've got sports and a swimming pool and paddle and drama. So yes, there's this little corner of Lisbon has far more. Once you just sort of start scratching the surface, has far more than a lot of people realize. Yeah,
it's true. And it's good to have an international school there because it's an area that's growing a lot, but was lacking on that particular part, which was the international schools. Right. So I think we covered everything there. Is there anything about the Lisbon that you would like to talk about before I ask Amy some questions?
Sorry, Amy. Of course. I think one of the things to me that I would love to sort of highlight, I think for schools looking forward, and I don't know whether John would agree as a parent, is trying to imbibe in children aspects of life that you can't be examined in. And to me as a dad, that's becoming increasingly important. I of course want the children to do as well as they can in exams, but we mustn't be holden to just having exams tucked under our arms. We want some skills as well. So it was a complete accident, but having chosen the name the Lisbon, we realized that the Portuguese for good is in the middle of the name. And so we have developed all of our life skills around Boa, belong, own, and act. And so all of our skills and entrepreneurship and performance and leadership, etc., are built into a BOA program that's in the curriculum, embedded within the curriculum, and that includes parents as well. We want parents to be involved in that. So, so far, I think I've got the most extraordinary range of skills in our parent body, who we want to share and get the parents in to help us with that.
Oh, that's excellent. I think now as a parent, I must say, one thing that I find very important is how we can get involved with the community without having like an extra agenda full of events. Sometimes those events are not even that helpful. Sometimes it's about being able to teach, do a workshop on the area that you are familiar with, and that gets you to, mingle with the teachers in a different way, and
Yes.
so on. But I also like to share something that I heard from other parents, and I think was very interesting. She said she was looking for a school that didn't give her child too much homework, because she thinks that if I work 8 hours a day and I bring work home, there is a crisis. It's something is not going well at work. And we all understand there's a crisis. So we stop, the whole family, and they help me get on with this bit of my extra work. But when it comes to children, they study for like 4 or 5 hours a day. And if they come home with work, how are they going to experience this other side of life, the family time, and so on? And I thought that it was a very interesting perspective. It wasn't about laziness or not wanting to do homework, but about prioritizing the free time for other experiences.
Jane, I think particularly for younger children, this is a good time. This is what I meant when I said, blank sheet of paper, we can ask all those questions. Mm-hmm. And actually, if you sit down and say, why in 2023 are we asking children to do 20 minutes, half an hour, 3 hours work, whatever it is, at home? What is the point of homework? And it's a really, really good question. So we've definitely got a rule that children under 11 don't do homework at the school. There are some things that parents love to do with their children as well. I hope I speak for most parents that actually helping them learn to read is a real privilege. And that's something that obviously parents would continue to want to do. But no, I completely agree with you. I think when the children are getting a little bit older, actually being able to organize themselves to do work on their own, independent study, is really important. And we need to help them organize that. So it's a sort of smooth pathway up towards when they have to prepare for exams later on.
Yeah, I agree. Great. Fine. Okay. So now, Martin, excellent. Thank you very much. I have a couple of questions for Amy, because I think now that we covered a lot about, the needs of the parents, what our clients want, and the school perspective, I think it's good to know about the real estate markets, because that's one of the questions. We've got questions now in our chat. Thank you very much. I hope to address all of them, but if not, just keep jotting down there your question and our team will answer it. But Amy, thank you for being here. So tell me, from the experience that you have with your client, how important is proximity to the school? Do you vouch what John and Martin said about being able to walk to school?
Absolutely. I think for a lot of our clients, sort of a main driver in their search, whether it's, a rental search, whether it's a search to purchase, a lot of it, if the families have children, is completely centered around the distance to the school. I mean, a lot of within Lisbon, of course, it's going to be walking distance. We also have a lot of client searches, in the Lisbon sort of greater metropolitan area. You've got Oeiras, Park International, large American school in Sintra, Tassis. So driving still, but looking at the sort of routes that are going to be driven and how is the school traffic around that route. And, with rush hour traffic going in and out of the city, how that's going to affect the time as well. Because like John said, I think no one wants to be sat in the car for an hour in the morning and an hour in the evening with the children when you could be doing, a million other things with them. So a lot of our searches will be centered around, those lifestyle factors, number one being usually the school that the parents have chosen.
Okay. And do they come with you with a list of schools, and then you need to look at properties around there?
Yeah. I mean, sometimes, for example, the American school and TASIS, they're actually quite close to each other. So the parents know they want them to be in either of those schools. We know a kind of catchment area that we can look at that's going to be a reasonable distance for them. Or a lot of the time there will just be one and the children have already been accepted, and that part of the kind of journey to moving here is already out of the way. So we've got a really clear vision of where we're going to look. But sometimes, and understandably, schooling is very important for a lot of families in their budgeting. They want them to go to the best schools, which can sometimes mean, the budget for the housing can be affected. And so we need to be strategic as well. And, in offering up different options of areas that, maybe aren't in the immediate vicinity that clients will have heard of, straight off the bat, Cascais. There might be a slightly in between neighborhood where, the budget might stretch further and it's still a very convenient distance to the school. So I think we provide a lot of value in, our local knowledge, helping families when they're looking to move here, where is going to make the most sense as well.
Okay. And is it the same, like in the UK and the USA, if properties that are located close to schools, close to very good schools, they tend to be very expensive. Do you think, is this the same in Portugal? Is it slightly different?
I think it's similar. Yeah. I mean, when you look at, the concentration of the price per square meter in the vicinity of very popular international schools, it does cause an increase. I mean, when we're looking at places like Lisbon, of course, Lisbon on the whole is quite an expensive city compared to the rest of Portugal anyway. It will be interesting actually to see, Martin, what happens when your school opens, because Alcantara, previously has been a slightly, like you said, area of the city that's been meaning to get gentrified. There is a lot of investment happening there. There is a lot of property being built there. And previously there wasn't really an international school. So how that's going to affect the market, in the coming 3 to 5 years is going to be really interesting to kind of test that theory. But from kind of past experiences, generally it will most likely help the prices to increase in that area because people will want their children to walk to the school. Exactly.
Yeah. And Alcantara is a very interesting area because, now they have there's two Michelin style restaurants there. There's so much infrastructure work being done. And now the Lisbon opening. So, it will be an interesting place to watch. And then can you speak of any trends or developments in the real estate market in Lisbon or in Portugal in general that was influenced by the demand for international schools?
I think a kind of micro version is definitely the kind of sort of Oeiras, Sintra, Cascais triangle, because there is such a huge concentration of international schools in these areas outside of the city, potentially for families looking, that maybe don't want the city lifestyle, something a bit more suburban, houses instead of apartments, things like that. A lot of the, areas in the immediate vicinity of those schools are much more highly priced than, for example, an area a slightly longer distance from the school in the same, Sintra is a big area, Cascais is a big area, Oeiras is a big area, but those areas closest to the international schools are actually where the price per square meter is the highest. Okay. So that's a kind of trend that you can see.
Okay. Wow. Okay. Amy, thank you very much. I just realized we've been speaking for 44 minutes, and so we don't have much time left for the Q&A. But it's been amazing speaking to all of you. Very hard to control myself because I have all these questions. But now I'm going to ask a couple of questions here from the chat. And some very interesting ones, but I'll try to summarize into one question. But I'll just going to let our audience know that we won't be able to address all of them right now, but it doesn't mean that it will not be answered. It will just be answered by our team online. So one here that is for Amy so someone is asking for an idea of the most expensive square meters in Portugal, in Lisbon, sorry, the areas.
The areas. I mean, realistically, it's the kind of Avenida de Liberdade neighborhood, which isn't actually that close to many of the international schools. So it's, you know, the poshest road in Lisbon. It has Prada, it has everything. That's the most expensive per square meter. You also have Chiado. Some of the areas, for example, Campo de Rico isn't definitely by no means cheap, but slightly less expensive and close to Redbridge. So luckily there's neighborhoods that are still accessible. Alcântara for the Lisboan, not the most expensive price per square meter. So very easy to find a property and be in walking distance to an international school. So not to worry.
Okay, great. And if you want to know more about it, you can book an appointment with Amy as well. So we will share her contact as link here. Right, so we have a question here from Martin. Are there any specific accreditations that parents should look for when considering an international school?
Yeah, there's a couple actually that I would always recommend. So there's, on a general level, the sort of kite mark for international schools tend to be COBIS, which is the Council of British International Schools for the British curriculum, and then the CIS, which is the Council of International Schools. They're not the only ones. There are others as well. WASC, it covers sort of North American schools. The NEASC, which is the New England Association of International Schools. So there are those, but having something that has a bit of a kite mark, but also they don't call them inspections, they tend to call them visits, but there are standards that they have to adhere to. So that would reassure parents. And then, of course, there's the curricular ones. So for example, you know, if the school claims they are teaching the International Baccalaureate, does it have the International Baccalaureate stamp at the bottom? There's other curricula like Cambridge or AQA. So look for one of those that is a recognised one that you've heard of. But then also in Portugal, for example, it's important that the school has the link to the Portuguese Ministry of Education and has that stamp as well. So the school's not acting in isolation. And I think, you know, not only does that give a standard and assurance to parents, it also means that if parents are moving either in and out of Portugal to other countries, that they have comparable schools. Something like the International Baccalaureate, for example, the curriculum is similar all around the world, and they know that their children are not going to be adversely affected if they move them in and out of different schools. Although, having said that, if your child is below 13, I wouldn't worry about going to different schools and different curricula. I think that can get overplayed, as John has sort of testified with his son. I think John's son changing school 2 or 3 times already.
At that age.
When they're young, they grow roots very quickly and they can adapt.
Okay, good advice. Right, so we have time for one more question. I will get the one. Let's give it to John. John, what advice would you give to parents who are in the process of selecting an international school for their children in Portugal?
Gosh, you know, I mean, like a lot of things in life, I think it's best just to dive in and immerse yourself in as much information as you can with regards to the subject matter at hand. So find great credible sources of information. Gosh, look where we are. So there's a bunch of people here who are interested and eager to talk with you about it. Call the schools directly. That was what I did, and take school tours, because if you take a school tour, then you can actually get a sense of the place, you know, and experience the school in person. Although the Lisboan sounds exciting as well. I don't know if you can tour it just yet, but it's just nothing. Yeah.
And Gisèle, can I back what John says?
Yes, sure.
it's like buying a house. I think going to see a school, you have a feeling when you get there, how warm the people are. As John said, go for a tour. You must go for a tour because you get to meet people, you get to see the children in action, although not in my school because I haven't got any children in action yet. But it's actually about meeting the people.
It's going to be excessively clean, your school.
It'll be so squeaky clean. Gotta love a new build. And just ask your kids, how they feel about the story of the school. We talked with each of our children, and of course, with an 8-year-old, there's only so much leeway you can give them in the decision-making process, but you don't try and jam anything down their throats. Although with the second language, sometimes you do have to tell them, like, look, just keep going.
Oh yeah,
you're gonna eventually get there. But just go and experience it, and be resilient. Be prepared to experience all of the slings and arrows that come from something that's, going to have unplanned bumps along the way. Gosh knows what we have, but you'll grow from it. So it's a great experience.
It is indeed, and that's very good advice. I think, you have to visit, you have to listen to your kids, research, talk to people that knows. That are in the know. So, and I think, unfortunately, we have to go because it's been 51 minutes talking. But if you need to speak to any of our speakers here, Aline will be available. We'll shed links. So for Aline, for Amy, John also with his Green Ocean Advisors, but also speaking as a parent, and Martin Harris, great principal at the Lisbon, and I'm really looking forward to visit the school. I think it's going to look great. And thank you, guys. Tomorrow we are back here to talk about schools on the other side of the river, the south bank of Lisbon. It's called the Margem Sul. Thank you. Take care and see you next time.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thanks, guys.